And welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about a project based on the artwork of Mr. Tim Burton. Most of you know him as a movie director, but he started out as a young child as an artist like all of you. He just kind of developed his own style along the way. So we're going to look at some of his drawings from this version of Nightmare Before Christmas, which was one of the movies that he directed. I'm going to flip open. So here we have Jack Skellington. You can see with Tim Burton, his character design is very unique. A lot of his characters have very, very thin limbs. They have very thin necks, but they have very disproportionate bodies. Like the head is larger than the body here in this drawing. And the proportions change as you go throughout the story. So whatever it needed to be to work for that particular scene, the proportions change. Like here, his head is smaller than his body. So it just kind of changes. You can see in the background here, some characters have just one eye, but they've got, very loose pointed fingers. This one's got three. This character here has two different size eyes. The proportions are kind of a thing that isn't really important. What is important is trying to convey the idea of the character. And you can see here, Jack's arms are very, very narrow, and Zero is it doesn't exist in real life, so the proportions can be whatever you want them to be. And let's get to the next page here. Here you can see you got Santa, who's very wide, very fat, compared to Jack, even though they exist in the same, well, they're in different universes, but they're existing together. You can see how very, very different they are. Okay, Santa is very fat. But with all of the characters, you see that their proportions are very odd. Okay, and so you can see in Jack here, as Santa, has very, 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 very tiny little feet. His feet are smaller than his eyes. And you can see how the body just kind of bends and curves up and around. And his waist is here. There doesn't actually have a bend at the waist. And then his leg comes down. So his leg is just as long as his body, or actually from his knee to his foot is just as long as his body. So proportions aren't even anywhere close to what a real person is. But if you look at the characters of the kids here, they're fairly normal as far as proportions go. Yes, their faces are a little off, but the body, the proportions of the head to the body is about right. So we're going to look at some examples here of the project that we're going to do. These are all kind of teachers in the building, because you can only do so many self-portraits. So as you go along, see if you can figure out who it is. But what we're going to do is you are going to be doing a self-portrait in the style of Tim Burton. So your characters are going to have features that are a little off as far as their proportions go. They may be somewhat realistic, just have something that is emphasized, which is what a lot of Burton did. His lines were very, very loose, and they picked something in there that was exaggerated. Okay? So what we're going to do is you're going to take a piece of paper, and we're going to not necessarily do some thumbnails, but we're just going to do some quick sketches of the different parts of the body to see what it is that you think you want to do. So I would say we want to do a head and whatever other thing it is that you're going to do. Now, the movies that Tim Burton has done, he did Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which is the very first thing, which has a lot of very bizarre visuals in it. You've got Beetlejuice, you've got Edward Scissorhands, you got Mars Attacks, you got Corpse Bride, you got Alice in Wonderland, you got Frankenweenie, and you've got the Nightmare Before Christmas. So you've got a lot of different things, and some stories that aren't his that kind of can follow along with this. You have Coraline. We've got Paranorman. So anything that's kind of in that realm of claymation type spooky thing. So everything is a little bit different. It's like in Coraline, they've got button eyes. So just kind of all things that kind of along that notion. So for me, so if I was going to sketch my head here, so I'm going to make the head kind of round, and size wise here doesn't necessarily matter. So with him, his eyes generally are real big in the Burton style, so we're going to make an eye very large, and going to make the pupil very, very small. So if I'm drawing me, so I've got this, and there's a little nose, kind of a meh mouth. But think about your features. What do you have that is unique to you? So we never really have really big ears unless that's part of the character. So for me, I'm just gonna kind of come in here, do some scraggly lines real quick, just to kind of show where there's a beard gonna be. And again, this is just something that's a real quick sketch, and come in, throw some hair. And however you want. If you want to change it up a little bit, you can. Okay. And you know what, so just real quick, here's my head, just to kind of practice to see how it's going to be. If you want to change some stuff up, so maybe with this one, you've got one eye that is from Nightmare Before Christmas, and then maybe we've got one eye that is a Coraline. Maybe you only have one eye. So we've got buttons here. And then, just kind of sketch out something, say I'm going to have, a skinny torso, kind of sketch out how it's going to be. All right, so what we're going to do with this, so to do the actual thing, you want to kind of think of your overall proportions. So I'm going to draw a head, just like we just did. And I'm going to get skinny neck. I'm not going to worry about details yet. And we'll throw in, I usually wear a shirt with a collar. Maybe that collar ends up being really big. You want to kind of make it make sense to you. All right, so maybe that's a little bit long there. And you want it to be somewhat representative. So I'm going to go again with kind of a skinny, a narrow torso, kind of like Jack has. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be realistic. I mean, I don't want it to be realistic at all. Throw some buttons on here. Got a pocket. And with Tim Burton style, his lines are usually very loose. There's a lot of extra lines that are added into it, because that's just kind of the way that he draws things. So if you have a very sketchy line, that's okay. I'm just going to leave it there. So we're going to come up, again, proportions don't necessarily have to work out the way that they normally would. And just go through. You do want the left and the right to be consistent as far as the lengths of things. So that's good. And then we'll come in like this. His characters usually have very, very small feet. So we're just going to do like this. Get some little tiny feet like that. We've got some pockets on the side of the pants here, maybe. Now, you want to have, well, your left hand's going to have, your right hand's going to have a right hand on it. And again, his characters, things don't have to make sense. Short sleeve. Your pants, the clothing can be a little bit bigger, and then this is going to be a left. So sometimes you need to spin things around. Now, if you play a sport, you want to include a ball, or maybe, because one of his movies was Frankenweenie, he actually had a live-action version of that before it was animated. So maybe you want to include a dog in here. But, just kind of work your way around. Get the general shape of things in the way you want them to be. I usually wear a shirt that has some type of pattern on it. So we're going to kind of come in, yes, vertical lines. Now, initially here, we're just going to do a pencil drawing. So you don't necessarily need to get all of the details in, because we are going to ink it. All right. And we've inked one drawing already with another project that we've done. But with that, it was more about just outlining it to get to see the overall result. So with this, we're using the inking as a little bit more of an artistic flair within the actual thing. So it's going to be part of the drawing instead of just kind of something that is a function of the drawing. All right, so get a little bit of a line here. Not as good as the first one, but it's different and unique. Now, so this would be kind of a drawing. Well, this would be one step. Now you want to go in and we're going to ink it. There's lots of ways that you can go about doing this. Okay, got some art pens that are here. You go all the way from a brush, which is a very fat tip like this, which will give you a very thick line, all the way down to an extra small, which is very, very tiny. If you don't have something like this, I mean, you can use an ultra fine point Sharpie. You can use a Sharpie pen like this. Those will work. If you have just a regular rollerball pen like this, that will work. Or even if it's just a regular, like a click pen like this, that will work as well. If you want to get super fancy and you've got a dip pen, you can use a dip pen. A little bit trickier to use, a little bit old-fashioned, but that's good. So I'm going to push these aside, and I'm going to use just a regular pen. And I might come in here with my ballpoint pen to give it a little bit extra detail. So I'm coming in here, and I'm going to pull some lines in. Now your pen, depending on what it is, may be a little tricky to draw over the pencil line that's there. So you might have to work at it a little bit. All right, so coming through with this, and just going to get some lines in here. After the fact, I'm going to go in and going to erase all my pencil here. So I might have to come in and redo some of the pen. And you don't necessarily want to pull a clean line. You know, if your line's a little rough, that's fine, because we'll include some drawings in with this. His drawings, Tim Burton, they're not very clean. You know, he said that, you know, he wasn't the best artist at drawing things the way that they actually looked. So what he did is he had a teacher that said, if you can't draw them the way that they need to look, or that they do look, draw them the way that you want them to look. So from there, he started to develop the style. It was very loose and just very flow by the seat of his pants. And for him, that worked out. And I would agree with his teacher to an extent that you do need to know how to draw some things, but just depending on what it is that you're drawing, they don't necessarily need to look correct. Just like with a character like this, proportions don't necessarily matter. So we come in here. Now, your drawings, after you get them inked, are going to look a little bit different than the pencil. That's okay. We come in, heavy line here, and ears, and come in, draw in all of my hair that's in here. Now, this is by no means a finished drawing. I'll come in and work on this a little bit more, put a finished version of it at the end of this. But that gives you a rough idea what it's going to look like. And then we just come through with our pencil, or with an eraser. And what this is going to do is it's going to clean up a lot of that. I should let that dry a little bit longer. And you can see how that brightens up. So I'll come in, clean this up a little bit, and then we'll include a picture at the end. So good luck.